No, not
January 6th was a bad day.
Can I finish?
Murders are also bad.
Can I finish?
I want murder solved.
Can I finish?
Can you just let her finish?
Scott's going to...
Well, if she wants to come out here and take pot shots at me, I'm not going to allow it. It's a stupid argument. I'm not going to allow it.
Scott, just let her finish. I don't even know that we've even heard the argument yet.
No, we heard it. We heard everything.
You were denying. So go ahead, Julie.
CNN's resident MAGA clown, Scott Jennings, got into a very heated argument with Democratic strategist Julie Radzinski on Abby Phillip's CNN show. Now, I'm going to show you some clips from this heated debate between Abby Phillip, Julie Radzinski, Scott Jennings, and the rest of the panel. And then, of course, I will add my opinions as well. And then I want to know what you think in the comments. But let's roll it.
Everything is an emergency, giving him extraordinary powers that are supposed to be temporary in many cases, but he's using them in ways that have never been used before. Where does this end, Scott?
Well, I guess in the case of safety for Washington, D.C., it'll end when it's safe again. I mean, and Congress may need to get involved here.
What do you define as safe again?
Well, what do you define as an acceptable rate of violence in the city? I think the expectation of the citizens is they don't want to die or get carjacked.
I think becomes a very important question. How do we define what safe again means in an American city?
Well, I think in Washington, D.C., you're going to have substantial reductions in violence, substantial reductions in murder, substantial reductions in carjackings, and people are generally going to have to feel like they can walk around and not be under threat all the time. Now, some of this could be statistical, some of it could just be what the local residents are telling him about their quality of life. Will it be solved in 30 days? Probably not, but they're already making substantial progress. They've had over 100 arrests since August the 7th when he first brought this up. 43 people were arrested last night. Bad people are being taken off the streets. Illegal weapons are being taken off the streets. So they're already having some success. My advice on this, as a punditry matter, would be, well, let's see where we are at the end of 30 days. How much progress have they made? And then Congressman can make an assessment at that point about whether this is working, and maybe it would help to extend it a little bit.
I guess I'm old enough, Scott, to remember when you were appalled, as the rest of us were, on January 6th, when he wouldn't.
Because January 6th happened, should we not enforce the law today?
Excuse me.
Do you want murders today?
Let me finish, Scott.
Does January 6th equal no enforcement
Scott, I know you hate talking about
this is a silly argument.
No, let me finish before you make a point about a silly argument.
It'll be silly, but go ahead.
No, what's silly is you sitting down with Mitch McConnell over Chick-fil-A and lamenting how Donald Trump was putting all of you, including Mitch McConnell, in harm's way. But I guess now you're so...
I wasn't in harm's way. I was in Louisville.
No, your then boss, your friend Mitch McConnell certainly was. But, now...
January 6th was a bad day.
Can I finish?
Murders are also bad.
Can I finish?
I want murder solved.
Can I finish?
Can you just let her finish?
Scott's going to...
Well, if she wants to come out here and take pot shots at me, I'm not going to allow it. It's a stupid argument. I'm not going to allow it.
Scott, just let her finish. I don't even know that we've even heard the argument yet.
No, we heard it. We heard everything.
You were denying. So go ahead,
Scott,
Julie.
I know you're thirsty for that Senate seat, but let me finish. What I'm going to say...
I mean, you allow this every night.
Scott, just give me 1 second here. Let's just let her finish, please.
Okay.
Just 1
second. Listen, I know you've got the picking thing going on, but here's what I'm going to say.
What are you thirsty for? Some kind of relevance out here?
No, actually, Scott.
I don't know what you do.
Listen, there is no one on the left, no one who's a Democrat, no one who's a liberal, progressive, whatever term you would use to be the opposite of Scott Jennings. There is no one who is saying, we don't care about murders. Who cares? Murder's fine, right? Nobody likes crime, violent crime. But this is one of the disingenuous bad faith games that commentators, pundits, and propagandists like Scott Jennings constantly play. Scott Jennings says, we need to get to an acceptable level of violence. And then when Abby Phillip asks him what that is, what is an acceptable level of crime, of violent crime, of course, he turns back on her and won't directly answer the question. But what Scott Jennings will not admit, and this has been brought up over and over again on Abby Phillip's show on CNN, is that the crime is down in Washington, D.C. It's at a 30-year low. But our dear leader lies about that, says Washington, D.C. is this horrible cesspool of constant crime and violence. And then, the sycophants like Scott Jennings go on here on CNN and repeat these talking points. A lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. So if crime in D.C. is at a 30-year low, whatever they've been doing up until this point seems like it's been working. I mean, maybe it's not perfect. I'm not arguing everything's perfect. But does that trend merit the emergency use of national? Of course not. Of course it doesn't. Scott Jennings and the rest of the MAGA sycophants, they just ignore all this. And then when Julie Radzinski calls him out, he clutches his pearls and huffs, I'm not going to allow that, like a kid in elementary school. They dish it out all day long, but they can't even take an ounce of pushback. These are supposed to be the law and order people, right? And they're the ones who were fine with pardoning all of the violent J6 insurrectionists.
For a living.
Really? I elect a lot of Democrats. Let me finish my thought here, please. Can I just finish what I was about to say, which is that on January 6th, he could have deployed the National Guard. He chose not to. Now, today, because somebody named Big Balls got beat up, allegedly, he wants to deploy the National Guard to a place that has had a 30-year low in violence. And we all know that he is doing this because it's a power grab. He could have done this when this district was actually in danger on January 6th, but he didn't. And I think that's what's so offensive. He talks about backing the blue. He talks about law enforcement. He didn't give a damn, Scott. And you agreed back on January 6th. He didn't give a damn about those police officers and about the safety of people in Washington, D.C. Today, because he wants a power grab, he's doing this despite the fact that every statistic shows that Washington, D.C. has not been safer in the last 30 years. That's the
How is that going to fly? I mean, I don't know if this will ever go to a court. Maybe it will if he tries to get some kind of long-term extension. But how do you go from 2023, which was not even a high, honestly, historically not a high for DC, but a high in recent history, to now a 30-year low, to a few months ago, Donald Trump was saying crime in DC is so much better because of my people. He was saying that. And then go to Congress and say, we need indefinite authority over DC's local police force. How is that going to work?
Well, the answer is no for me. He's reassigning hundreds of members of the U.S. military, hundreds of FBI agents, and I'm curious to know what federal law enforcement responsibilities are those agents neglecting in order to perform local police functions in D.C. And I just want to echo my agreement. Donald Trump is probably the greatest champion of lawlessness and disorder in our nation's capital. On the very first day of his presidency, he issued a blanket pardon for 1,500 people who were connected to a violent invasion of the U.S. Capitol, a violent invasion in which law enforcement officers were assaulted with dangerous weapons like fire extinguishers and pepper spray. And so he has no credibility on the subject of public safety at all.
I mean, what you probably understand if you happen to be listening to this channel, if you're still listening on this video, is that Donald Trump is an authoritarian. He wants to be an authoritarian, a dictator, like his buddies Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. He wants to rule by whim and without constraint. And what he's doing in Washington, D.C. is a show of force. He's using the military in Washington, D.C. to crack down on crime, quote unquote. That's what they're saying, in an area when they're at a 30-year low in crime, violent crime. So nobody's arguing that there isn't crime in D.C. and that there's not room for improvement. What they're saying is it's an emergency that merits the deployment of the National Guard. So he's also trying to build these brutal private prisons like Alligator Alcatraz. They're selling merch to house immigrants, the vast majority of whom, like 90+%, are nonviolent, have not committed any crime at all. Remember that simply being in this country without documentation isn't actually a crime. It's a civil violation in most cases. But a bully needs a victim. An authoritarian needs an other to demonize and blame. Donald Trump is an authoritarian, and these propagandists like Scott Jennings are authoritarians as well. They love this. This is what they want. Scott Jennings is never going to admit, even when presented with the facts, that crime is down in Washington, D.C., because it doesn't fit the narrative they are trying to establish. Now, would we love to be in a country, in a world where there's never a violent crime ever? Of course we would. I'd love there to never be any murders. This would be fantastic. But that's not going to happen. Is the answer to dealing with violent crime sending in the National Guard? I think it's obviously not. Obviously not, right? That's a police state. MAGA is authoritarian. These creeps like Scott Jennings are authoritarians. Sociologists and historians will tell you that in any society, about 30% of the population trends towards authoritarianism. It just makes more sense to them. A strongman leader, a king, just makes more sense to them. They put all their trust there. They don't have to participate. Throughout history, across the globe, about 30% of any population tends towards authoritarianism anyway. And Donald Trump has tapped into that. I mean, when I'm watching Scott Jennings here, he's smirking, his smug face, he's rolling his eyes. Oh, you poor saps, right? All that every night on Abby Phillip's show. And I think she does a really job with her show, and I like Abby Phillip, but I wish she would be more stern with Scott Jennings. I don't even know why they have this guy on there. I think it feels like a token of like, well, let's listen to the other side. There's no other side. There's no good faith, right? I mean, he's a person in this country and he has a right to say the things, but they don't have to take it seriously. And sometimes they just need to cut his mic. I'd say, hey, you're in a timeout. You're in a timeout, Scott Jennings. You're behaving like a little toddler. We're going to put you in a timeout. I would love to see Abby Phillip do that. Just one time, just shut him down. But, you know, I don't know. Let me know what you think of this. It's like, what's the value of entertaining these propagandists like Scott Jennings, like Benny Johnson, like Tim Pool? I mean, platforming and giving them the mic time. What's the value of that? Let me know what you think in the comments.